and welcome back to Own Your Peace. I'm your host, Andy Theus, and today we are going to be diving into something really interesting and something that I have been kind of pondering for myself and really reflecting back on because I think it's a point in time that really defines us and really shows us what our soul's mission really is. First things first. What if the massive detour you hit in your late 20s wasn't a mistake, but your soul's way of redirecting you to your real path? I know my Saturn return hit hard. At that point in my life, I was in full corporate America. I was traveling all over the place and having to audit offices, and nobody liked to see me. As soon as I walked in the door, there was a look of sheer panic on most people's faces because most of the time I had to do unannounced audits. Every once in a while, I was able to do an announced audit, and that really helped people feel more at ease when I came because they knew I was coming. But most people didn't know I was coming. So as soon as I walked in the door, sure panic, and I just hated that feeling of going in. Obviously, I didn't want to find anything, but I was looking for their mistakes. I was looking for where they had failed and where they weren't protecting their clients. And for those of you who don't know, I was a financial advisor. I was a representative, registered principal. There it is. And my job was to supervise other financial advisors to make sure their trades were in alignment with the client's goals. That's what I had to keep in mind and what I was looking for. It was tedious work. There was no glory in it. There was no helping. There was no serving of my soul in that role. And it was eating the life out of me. So what happened? When I look back at the dates, they line up exactly with when I was told that they had to downsize. They gave me a great package when I left. It wasn't a firing. It was like, we can't afford you and we need to go a different direction. So it wasn't amenable, but it hurt hard because all of a sudden I was at home with two little babies and a husband who was still really fresh and starting in his career. And we still needed my income. And thankfully, I had a really nice unemployment package that helped us kind of keep us stable as we were trying to figure out my second act. So that was my first really introduction into how the Saturn return thing worked. At the time, did I know what it was? Absolutely not. I had no connection as to what it was or what it meant in my life. I just knew everything was like falling apart and I had to figure out what I was doing next with my life. So I want to invite you today to think about this time frame in your own lives and really going back in time to what that actually was trying to tell you about your life's trajectory. So today we're traveling back in time to your Saturn return to uncover the redirection you received and how it's still guiding you now. That redirection I had in that time frame of when everything felt like it was falling apart still serves me today. And I'm still learning the lessons from that time in my life and what that meant for my future trajectory. So that's what we're going to dive into. So let's dive into what a Saturn return is, kind of a refresher's course, if you will. So a Saturn return is when your Saturn comes back to the exact same spot it was at birth. So if you have a Saturn in Virgo, when was it in Virgo again at that same degree? That's what a Saturn return is. So it usually happens between the ages of 28 and 30. Again, it's personal. It depends on where that Saturn is on your natal chart and when it gets there. Sometimes it takes a little bit less, sometimes it takes a little bit more. And then it's going to hit again with another Saturn return around the age of 58. So Saturn's archetype. Who is Saturn? Why do we care about Saturn? Saturn is all about discipline, responsibility, structure, and reality checks. I always like to call Saturn the really, really rich, cranky uncle who wants to give you all the things. He wants to give you all the blessings, but he's going to make you work for it. He's going to make you learn the lessons. He's going to have a writer in that will or that trust that he's like, my kids aren't getting any money or my relatives aren't going to get any money until they do these things. So it delays blessings, but it is still a rich planet that wants to gift us with a lot of things. But the things that happen, the blessings and the benefactor part of it happen after the challenge. They come after the learning. And typically Saturn gives blessings later in life. So if you're in your 40s like myself, This is probably when you're starting to reap the benefits of those lessons from your 20s, from your 30s, and your early 40s. Because we're going to talk about Saturn squares and what time they show up and how they are also little course corrections. So those are the things to think about. The themes with a Saturn return are endings, like losing your job, pivots, growing up moments. I had to figure out what I was doing with my life again, and then choosing a more aligned path. Me working and traveling and doing this soul sucking work wasn't serving me anymore, and it was time to pivot. And I had for the longest time complained about my job. I hated my job. I hated the where I worked. I didn't like it didn't feel in an integrity with my soul and the work that I was doing. There's one person I enjoyed working with, the rest of them, not so much. It was a very toxic work environment for myself, and I hated it with a passion. So what does the universe do? It gets me right out of that job. I was asking for it. I was asking to be fired because I hated the work that I was doing, and I loathed going to work every day. I hated leaving my babies at daycare and having to go into work. So that's what Saturn return does. It's like, okay, it's working with the universe. It's like, okay, she didn't like this. It's not serving her. It's not on her soul's path. This is absolutely not what she's meant to be doing with life. She's not meant to be traveling away from her babies and doing all this work of auditing offices. That's not her passion. That's not what she lights her up. She's literally sleepwalking through her life. Let's do something to shake things up. And that's what Saturn return does for us. And every one of us is going to have a different pivot. It's going to look really different. Also depends on what house your Saturn is in. My house is in the 10th house. So all my pivots and all my Saturn squares and all that have all been in regards to the work that I do. If you have it in your first house or your second house, it's going to have different themes based on what house your Saturn is in. But we're not talking about that today. We're just really focusing on the power of the pivot and how these course corrections have long lasting understanding of our soul's mission. And it's a great place to reflect on, especially as we're in this portal window right now of eclipse season. Again, a time of pivots. And with Saturn just retrograding back into Pisces, that's coming to play. So Saturn's at play here. So this is a perfect time for us to revisit the lessons that Saturn is trying to teach us through that return and also these ongoing squares that we'll experience throughout our lifetime. Okay, so the redirection portal, that's what we like to call this, right? Saturn returns as a cosmic course correction. It can feel harsh, but it clears what's false in our lives. Patterns people may, or you may even have experienced, is leaving jobs, relationships that weren't aligned. Maybe you had a breakup, a redirection there, facing money, health, or responsibility shifts, committing to long-term visions. What is it that you actually want to give back to this world? This is a reframe, not a punishment, but Saturn, as your wise, old, cranky old uncle, is going to get you right back on your path. If you're continually looking back at that Saturn mishap or whatever happened when you were in those late 20s, early 30s, and all this was coming apart for you, if you're still looking back at it with regret or with shame or with guilt or any type of negative energy, I invite you to go back to that time period and really reflect. And for me, that was the most wonderful thing that could have happened to me. If I had stayed in that job, I don't know what would have happened to me, but I would have lost my dang mind. Me coming home and learning how to hustle, and how hustle is not the right word because that's not what I did, but I learned how to be an entrepreneur. I learned how to create businesses for myself where I could be at home with my babies, because that was what was most important to me at that time, was to be a stay-at-home mom and figure out something that I could provide for my family, but also be there when my kids needed me. That was my anchor. That was my intent. And Saturn helped me to learn that for myself. If I would have never been let go of my job, I'd probably still be at that job. I'd still be struggling and trying to figure this out for myself. But because I was let go and I was given the cushion of an unemployment package, I had time to kind of settle into my next steps. And that's when I created my first online business. It was called Workout from Home, where I bought workout equipment and I had a drop shipping business. That's when everyone was like, make money online, and you created websites and you found a drop shipper and you use all the SEO. So I really learned a lot about SEO with that business. And it's so interesting that all these things I learned along the way, if you look at them at first glance, it doesn't really even, you know, translate into what I'm doing now, but I was learning foundations I needed to learn. I was learning SEO. I was learning product and product description and how to find sources for things. So it all ties. Okay, so keep that in mind as we're going and we're discussing these different time frames in your life and why these squares are so important. So your first Saturn square happens around age 36 to 38. So if you're in that time frame right now, welcome. Hope it's going well for you. Saturn is squaring your natal Saturn. So this is at a 90-degree angle, and it's creating friction and a reality check. This happens again at age 41 to 43. Another square happens. So this energy is it's Saturn asking, have you integrated the lessons I gave you at your return? Or have you drifted back to autopilot? Okay, here's the contrast here. Your return is about initiation and redirection. It took me away from working in corporate America to being at home and figuring out how to be an entrepreneur at home. A square is all about evaluation and recalibration. I did this whole thing and I'm going to give you guys an amazing GPT prompt that will help you do the same work yourself so you can really dive into this energy of what happened during this time frame for you. So my first Saturn square was in 2015 to 2016. So if I look back into that time frame, that was a really successful time in my blog. That was when the blog was probably at its height. And I was learning a lot about how to create programs and sales funnels and really a lot of boring stuff. But my blog was popping off. I was getting a lot of traction from, ad revenue for my site. I had a lot of brand collaborations. I was creating my whole Maybe I Will fitness program that I was going to sell. There was a lot going on during that time frame for me, but I was overextended. I was after the money. I was after creating wealth and abundance for my family, and it wasn't serving me. I was burning myself out. I like to call it my girl boss era. I would wake up every morning at like 5 a.m. I would do all the journaling, all the things, manifesting, all the things, and then I would go work out at the gym, boxing for an hour, and then I would lift after that. So I was working out for a couple hours every day after waking up super early. And then I was pushing myself all day long while the kids were at school. But that time, all my kids were in school. And it was wearing me out as a projector. That is absolutely not the way that I should be functioning. And it really took a toll on me. So during that first square, I learned that I needed to let go and not push myself so hard. So after that, I created another business, which is called Gold Arrow Media. And it was a program where I learned how to use software to help people grow their Instagram accounts. I hate to break it to you, but like that was the time where like the follow unfollow was a big deal. And I helped a lot of accounts get really big using the software. Looking back, it's a little shady, but it wasn't shady because it worked and people really did grow. They got real followers. It was genuine. And then things started to shift and change where it was more bot driven than what I was doing. I learned that I didn't have to go so hard. I could make really good money for my family, but make it be softer, make it be less draining for me. I learned to do more consulting during that time where people were calling me in and they were asking for my help to grow their accounts from a consultative basis. So everything I had learned from that point, I was transitioning from all this doing to showing people how things could be done, more of a projector type vibe. So it's fascinating to me as this evolves. And I'm sure you'll see these parallels in your own life, how these things shift and show up at, that 36 to 38. I learned a lot about growing online business and in that online space and how to really work hard. And then after that, I integrated that I don't have to work as hard to make good money. So I learned how to soften my approach and how to use my gifts of business to help others thrive. So I was giving back, I was sharing, I was more in alignment, but still didn't feel right. Obviously, helping people grow Instagram accounts through my online systems that I had isn't what my soul wanted to do for the rest of its life. Yes, it was exciting money, and it was so fun to have sales going through all the time and have consistent income coming through. So it showed me what was possible. So it was a really good time frame of that square and then the integration afterwards. And then again, your second square around for me hit 2021 to 2022. That's when I started my first podcast with a partner, and it went great. I learned a lot about myself, and it was really a moment of me understanding that I could do this by myself. And I'm so grateful for the lessons I learned in that time frame because it was a really big turning point for me. It was a turning point of me going more towards my spiritual gifts and being really vocal with my spiritual gifts. And I feel like I had to be in a partnership to begin with because I don't feel like I could have done it without that. I would have been too scared. But it was just really this understanding of sharing my voice, of using my voice in this podcast platform, and how that being really open and honest about where I was spiritually, the shift that I had made from traditional religion to more spirituality, and really shining a light on that part of my life where it's been pretty quiet before. And that again, during this whole time frame, there was this shift to me going back to my original love of astrology, of discovering human design, of integrating that into the work that I do. So here we are, 2025, and I have fully integrated the lessons from my first two squares. I'm fully standing in myself. I'm standing in my own power and my own voice and knowing my worth. But as I look through all these different time frames, and you'll do the same when you go through the Saturn return for yourself, is these lessons all add. I had to have lost my job in 2007, 2009. I had to have that height of really hustling in that girl boss era to learn that that wasn't what I wanted for myself. And I had to have the launching with somebody else to have faith in myself to do it on my own. So all these things are really teaching us really important lessons. So let's pivot here a little bit. And I want you to think about your Saturn return as your cosmic wedding vows. You're making a vows to your soul. And then the square in Saturn is really checking in, are you still honoring those vows? Are you still doing the work? My vow was that I needed to stay home and create a business that supported my family. That was a vow that I made, that I am here to do soul work and to do it on my own terms. And each check was like, are you doing that? Are you doing that in a way that honors your soul and your soul's contracts that you made? See how that works? And for you, I want to ask you guys some questions. So if you're able in a place, close your eyes and really think about these time frames for yourself. What was ending and beginning for you between the ages of 28 and 30? What responsibilities or truths did you step into during that time frame and through that time frame? Where are you being nudged now at that square, if you're in one of these square time frames, to honor these commitments more fully? I want you to really find the thread that links the then to the now. Because when we go back and we really look at these time frames with that eye of understanding, that eye of reflection, we're going to see themes woven throughout these periods of our time frame. I will tell you, there's some major themes that recur during these. And because my Saturn is in the 10th house, those themes all had to do with my career. And those were very public times within my career at those time frames. So I want you to think about these things. And think about the house. We talk about the houses a lot. So, if your Saturn's in the fourth house, it's going to probably be a little bit more driven around home and family. Those are some things. Okay, so map it out. If Saturn return was the redirection for you, and the square is the course correction, what does that look like when you're looking in that rearview mirror? If the return lesson equals the seed planted, the square equals pruning and growth check. So keep those in mind. So here's some just for examples. If someone left a toxic job at their return, the square may challenge them now. Are they truly in purposeful work, or have they slipped back into safety again? I might have slipped back into safety where it was easy to get those influencer jobs or the sponsored content. Am I supposed to be shucking Greek yogurt? No, that's not my purpose. Is that something that someone else is going to be lit about? Absolutely. But that I knew that wasn't me. I was getting big paychecks to talk about other people's products, and it just didn't sit well with my soul. I was slipping back into safety. I was slipping back into the safety of things that didn't serve my soul. Then again, back in 2021, 22, I was slipping back into the safety of working with someone else and not standing on my own the way that I needed to. And I was losing myself a little bit again. Another thing, if this was health oriented for you, maybe it was the sixth house that was activated for you. If committed to healthier habits, Saturn squares might highlight where your discipline has waned. So it's going to highlight for you where discipline is being questioned. Are you going back to comfort zones that no longer serve you? Are you sifting back into complacency and not stepping into soul growth? That is one of the biggest. I think I posted a quote about this the other day on my stories where complacency and being comfortable in our lives can actually be one of the greatest tools of the adversary. Call it the devil, call it the ego. It keeps you comfortable. It keeps you complacent so you can start going day in and day out of your life, almost like in a groundhog situation where you're not waking up to how you're meant to serve, how you're meant to share your gifts with the world. And it can feel numbing if you're constantly in that space of, I like to call it that groundhog theory, where you're basically repeating the same day over. You got plenty of money in the bank, things feel safe, things feel comfortable, but there's not that soul challenge, that soul growth that we all really crave in our lives. So that Saturn return, these Saturn squares are going to reignite that within ourselves, and they're going to push us to ask, are we sunk into complacency again? Are we still trying to do the work to wake up within ourselves? Some things to think about. So here's some practices and anchoring tools that can help you work with this energy of reflection. So write a letter to your Saturn return self, thanking them for their courage. So go back to that 28, 38, 30-year-old version of yourself and write them a letter to thank them for the courage. Like that was a really scary time for me when I lost my job and I had to figure out what I was doing. And it took a lot of patience. It took a lot of courage to step into doing things that I was not comfortable doing. But I learned so much in the process, and everything that I've learned along the way has guided me to really being able to use my soul gifts of astrology and human design and really understanding and seeing people and what they need to be doing. But I also have that really tactical version of myself that knows how to take someone's soul gifts and make them marketable and help them to put themselves out there in a way that they're seen. And it's this beautiful work that I do, and I absolutely love it. And as I reflect back, that was one of the major themes that kept coming. So here's some journal prompts to really help you anchor these in for yourself. What did I learn at my return that I've forgotten? That was a big one for me. That was really helpful. Where am I being asked to recommit now? Oof, good questions here. What structure, boundary, or commitment would future me thank for today? Keep that in mind. Some optional homework for you, astro homework, if you will. Pull up your chart and look at your Saturn, sign and house, and know what themes are being activated. So again, we talk about houses a lot. If you want, shoot me a DM and I can help you find your Saturn and what house it is and what sign it is, and I can kind of help you understand that placement a little bit more. But again, I'm going to put a ChatGPT prompt in the show notes, and I just want you to cut and copy that and use that to do this work with ChatGPT. Again, always, always, always go back to your own intuition. It's going to give you some like journaling prompts, and then journal on those and what comes up with for you. Do not let ChatGPT do all the heavy lifting, but it's a great place to start. Always connect with your intuition and your higher self when you're doing this work. So as we close on this really cool episode, I really hope that this made you think about these time frames in your life and these challenges that you have faced so far in a new way. Saturn isn't about punishment, it's about longevity, resilience, and alignment. It's always here to help you get back on your path, to get back to your soul's contract. It's this gentle reminder that when we really focus, where we're meant to focus. If we put on the right glasses, we see the right things for ourselves and we get back into that alignment space. Saturn return gave you your map. Saturn squares ask you if you're following it, if you are doing those things. So I invite you to book a soul strategy session where we can decode your Saturn, the story of the return in the square, and we can really give you some aligned steps to move forward. And that can be a one-off session or of course, my monthly reoccurring coaching program. Those are great ways that we can really work with this Saturn energy and help you to understand what it is. Again, you always have that prompt. It's free to do that. But again, I am a resource for you to work and to use these maps and the I like to call them star maps from our creator that really are here as tools and as nudges back to what we were created to be. We have a loving creator that wants us to succeed. They want us to be living our highest, brightest lives. They don't want us in struggle. They don't want us in scarcity. They don't want us in lack. But we have to do the work. And when we do that work, when we live from a place of following our soul's purpose and stepping into fulfillment of the work that we're meant to do, the game board changes and things get to be fun. We get to thrive again. And that is the power of reflection on these periods of time because they're weaving a story into your soul's progression. Much love, and we will see you next week.